Brayton fisherman prayer is simply this. Dear God, be good to me. The sea is so wide, and my boat is so small. Today's readings speak about creation, don't they? In 1 Kings chapter 18, we know the wonders of nature, fire and clouds, winds and rains, and all of them serve God's purposes. Today, we hear from 1 Kings chapter 19. It depicts Elijah, a great prophet, who was undoubtedly a man of great faith. But because he's in opposition to idolatry, Queen Jezebel is out to get him and seeks to kill him. So he flees to a desert to take refuge in a cave. He's a beaten and broken man, to say the least. He even wants God to take him. He's at wit's end, we could say. We've all been there at the end of our rope at some time on the journey. He does not experience God's presence in familiar wonders of nature. Not in the fierce winds, or the earthquakes, or the fires, but rather in a quiet whisper. If we pay careful attention to this tiny whispering sound, it is translated as a sound of sheer silence. Deafening silence. That's where Elijah encounters the living God. He's strengthened by the experience, and he's resolute to keep on his mission as being a prophet. We don't have to hear God's voice in dramatic crisis. We can hear God's voice in the quiet of our everyday lives if we really listen. No matter how busy we are, our spiritual growth requires that quiet, still place within. Mother Teresa of Calcutta said we need to find God each day. And God cannot be found in noise or restlessness. God is the friend of silence. See how nature, trees, flowers, and the grass grow in silence. See how the stars and the moon and the sun, they move in silence. God speaks in the silence of our hearts. Listening is the beginning of prayer. Souls of prayer are souls of great silence. We need silence to be able to touch souls. That's the wisdom of a saint, a remarkable one that we're all familiar with. Right outside the chapel here at Holy Family Chapel at Mercy is Jesus walking out of the waters. It's in all four Gospels, this story. And many a times I see a person holding his hand, asking for strength to lift them up because life is drowned. Whenever we encounter disciples in the boat, we're dealing with the church, the bark of Peter. The church sails through time and space and history. Jesus wants us to know that he is our anchor. Despite perils, winds, rains, temptations, tribulation, sufferings, persecution, turbulences, trials that beset every journey. There's a spiritual warfare as well, a battle not with just flesh and blood, but with the powers and the principles that are visible and invisible. Things that we can see and things that we can't see. Jesus goes to a mountain in silence. The risen and ascended Lord, he prays that his church that passes through time would be guided. He intercedes for this church. Early in the morning, the disciples see Jesus coming toward them. They think it's a ghost. He's walking on the sea. They're terrified and they're frightened and they cry out. Jesus calms them with the words, "Take courage," the gift of the Holy Spirit. Ego ami, it's me. Do not be afraid. Then Peter says, "If it's you, Lord, tell me to come to you." And he summons Peter and he beckons Peter, and every one of us come. Come, come. Come to deeper faith. Come to deeper trust. Come to deeper love. I will not abandon you. When life gets dangerous and hard and scary and messy, in the darkest hours, on the darkest night, I'll be there. Peter stands predominantly for the church of the ages. The church in every age is threatened by the chaos of evil, the night. And the powers of death, the stormy waters that brew from the apostles' time to our contemporary world. Throughout time, our faith, like Peter's, will be tested and hopefully strengthened. We experience trials and tribulations to grow us as disciples. The church is at its best when it has confident faith and it reaches out to the Lord, not to gurus, not to modern culture heroes, as good as they may be. But we have confident faith and unwavering trust in the Lord. Peter got out of the boat and he began to walk on the water towards Jesus. Walking on the water meant you're living faith. You're swimming in grace. You can't do anything by human powers or abilities. You have to rely on him. Tap into divine power. The divinity of Christ gives me strength. How did you make it through such a dark time? The Lord gave me the grace. I asked for the grace, and he delivered. Some people think if you have enough faith, your life will be smooth sailing, plain seas. That's not so. Faith doesn't shield us from life's hard rocks, and even death. Faith doesn't save us from trials and tribulations, but it gives us strength to face them, doesn't it? A person who has faith has a source of strength in their lives, inspiration in their lives, especially when trouble besets their boat. It's not we who keep faith, it's the faith that keeps us afloat, doesn't it? A person with a little grain of faith, Gandhi, the Indian spiritual leader, said, "A little grain of faith in God never loses hope." How do we throw out the life preserver to our brother and sister in danger? At some time, every disciple of Jesus is faced with very trying circumstances, very difficult decisions to make, very great sorrows to carry, and very powerful temptations that can capsize us to sin. And yet, the whole crux of God's promises that boils down to one reality: Emmanuel, God is with us. He's with us through it all, and always will be. We need not fear. Oh, we may lose the way, we may lose courage, we may lose strength, but God is still with us, and His grace will save us. We must depend on that. One day, all of us will leave our earthly boat, and will be carried through the stormy waters of this world, and will set out on the dark waters of death, every one of us. And if at difficult moments on this life's journey we opted for Christ, at death it will come natural to us to reach out for His hand, to haul us to the shores of eternity. And so I close with the wisdom of a 5th century saint, St. Augustine. Watch, O Lord, those who wake, those who watch, and those who weep. Give your angels charge over those who sleep. Tend to your sick ones, Lord. Give rest to your weary ones, Lord. Bless your dying ones, Lord. Soothe your suffering ones, Lord. Give pity to your afflicted ones, Lord. Shield your joyous ones, Lord. All for your love's sake.